Hi, Kevin here. Today we're going to fix the famous Italian flatbread called focaccia. Focaccia is a yeast bread. It's super simple to make and it's totally delicious to eat. Now, it does take a bit of time, so I'm going to jump right into the recipe. All right, the first thing you need is 1.5 cups of warm water. This is around 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And to the water, add 2¼ teaspoons of active dry yeast. You could use instant yeast here. In fact, you could use just 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. And then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of honey. This is local honey. And I did put it in the microwave briefly just to warm it a little so it would come out of the bottle easily. So that's 1 tablespoon. Give it a whisk. And then let this sit until it turns foamy. That's going to take, 5 to 10 minutes. All right. My yeast has turned very foamy, thus proving that it is very much alive. So now what I have here is 470 grams of all-purpose flour. That's about 3 3/4 cups of spooned and leveled flour. Now I'm going to make a little well in the center, add the yeast mixture, and stir until all of the flour is moistened and a shaggy dough develops. Now, this is all-purpose flour, but you could use bread flour. You could even use a combination of bread flour and semolina flour. And you just stir. This is going to become very difficult to stir very soon. There, we're good and moistened. So now, let me grab a knife. Scrape off me spatula. And then roll up your sleeves and add 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. And then work the oil into the dough with your hand. This is a fun job. You might want to ask one of your kids to do it, if you have any kids in your house. And they like to play with sticky things. Well, they will enjoy playing with this dough. And there we have it. Then cover the bowl with cling film and let the dough rest until it turns puffy. That's going to take about 30 minutes. All right, my dough has rested for 30 minutes, and as you can see, it's starting to turn puffy. So now, moisturize your fingers with some olive oil. And then we're going to stretch and fold the dough 4 times. So lift from one end of the dough and stretch and fold the dough over on itself. Then give the bowl a 1/4 turn and do the same thing. Stretch and fold. Another turn. Stretch. And you want to stretch as far as you can without tearing the dough. What we're doing is developing the gluten strands here. And then once more, stretch and fold. Then cover with cling film. And once again, let the dough rest for 30 minutes. Okay, the dough has rested for 30 minutes, and as you can see, it's becoming very puffy now, and that's exactly what we want. So now we're going to do another stretch and fold, and there will be a total of 3 stretch and fold sessions. So this is the second one. So oil your fingers and do the same thing as before. Lift from one end, stretch, and fold the dough over. And just look at these strands of gluten. Very beautiful dough. And there we are. And then as before, cover and let it rest for 30 minutes. All right, we're ready for our third and final fold. Stretch and fold, that is. Oil. And my hands are going to be very youthful looking after moisturizing them with all that olive oil. Stretch. Now the dough is becoming much more elastic each time we stretch and fold it. And again, we have all the gorgeous strands of gluten in here. Okay, so now I have to grab my baking dish. Okay, so this is a 9 by 13 non-stick baking dish, and I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of good olive oil. And no, that's not too much olive oil. Focaccia uses a lot of olive oil. Let me spread that out in here. And then in goes the dough. Use a scraper here. Now the reason we didn't knead this dough the way we would traditionally knead bread dough is because it's a high hydration dough. It's really too sticky to do the usual kneading by hand. So now I want to flip the dough to coat the other side with oil. Look at my hands. And then you want to press the dough and stretch it to try to reach the edges of the pan. And if the dough snaps back on you, and it probably will, then you just cover it and let it rest, for 15 or 20 minutes to relax the gluten. Then it will be easier to form into the shape of the pan. Actually, mine is doing a pretty good job right now. Okay, we're looking good here. So now cover the pan. And by the way, you don't have to do this in a baking dish. You could do it directly on a baking sheet. But do use the 1/4 cup of oil, even on the baking sheet. Okay, I'm going to let this rest for, 45 minutes or so, just until the dough proofs. Will become very puffy. While the focaccia is proofing, preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, decide what, if any, toppings you want to put on the bread. I'm going to use rosemary. So I'm chopping up some rosemary that I will put on top of the bread. And these are fresh sprigs. You want, roughly 2 tablespoons or so of rosemary. And I just chop the little leaves this way. And I'm going to put half of the leaves on the bread before it bakes. And then I will put the other half on the bread after it is finished baking. Because rosemary can turn black in the oven. And I want to have some green on top of my bread. And by the way, I adore the scent of rosemary. All right, my focaccia has pretty much doubled in volume. That was about 40 minutes. And now here comes the fun part. We have to dimple the dough. So what you do is oil your fingers once again, and then we're going to poke holes in the dough. And you don't want to be namby-pamby about this. Go ahead and push all the way to the bottom of the pan. And you want to put a lot of dimples in the dough. And you dimple the dough so that it will bake evenly. And then, let me dry my hands. Going to sprinkle some sea salt over the bread, or rather over the dough. And I'm going to add half of the rosemary that I chopped. Sprinkle that right on. Such a great perfume. And then this goes into the preheated 450 Fahrenheit oven until the bread puffs and turns crisp on the top and on the sides. That's going to take about 25 minutes. And here's the bread. It looks really beautiful. I love the dimples in this bread, and it's very crisp on top, and I'm sure it's crisp on the sides. I'm going to sprinkle it with just a little fresh rosemary. And then I'm going to let it sit here for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then we can slice into it. I can't wait to try this bread. Take off the decoration, and then, now typically when focaccia is served as an antipasto, it's cut into very thin slices. So that's what I'm doing here. Listen to that crunch. Oh, I cannot wait. And look at the interior. Look at all the air pockets. This is really magnificent. Well, I'm just going to have a taste right now. And I have some extra virgin olive oil, some very posh extra virgin olive oil right here. So good. You guys, this is so incredibly delicious. It's crispy on the outside, it's pillowy on the inside. It's got all these air pockets to, soak up the good olive oil. And oh, the perfume, the rosemary is just, I don't know, knocks it out of the park, okay? I will post the list of ingredients in the description box below. And if you learned anything from this video, please like, subscribe, and be sure to tap the little bell icon to receive notifications every time I post a new video. I hope you'll leave a comment too. Okay, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.